Welcome to this week's episode of Myths and Stories. Today, we are going to start what we're hoping is a 2 to 3 part series, and we're going to be focusing on the Cabal in particular. We're going to go through, hopefully, the entire history of the Cabal as we know it currently in game. Because we figured that a lot of people that are getting introduced to the Cabal via the seasonal story with Keitel and what's happening there may not have a full understanding of all of our different interactions with the Cabal in the earlier years of Destiny and Destiny 2, as well as like where did they come from? What are their motivations? What is their society like? All those fun things are stuff that we are hoping to answer during this series. So I'm excited. Say during research, I found out a lot of things that I had no idea about either, and I did play through all of that. So I think this will be a fun one.
See, kids, remember, research is fun.
That's right. And finding someone else to do all your research so that you could listen to it is even better.
You god dang right.
Zora knows all about that.
I know all about this. No, yeah. So I kind of pitched this idea to Myth about doing the Cabal because I mean, like especially in the most recent seasons, like we've had a ton of Fallen stuff thrown at us. We've had a ton of Vex stuff. Obviously, with Witch Queen, we've had Hive just crammed down our throats. But there's things like the Scorn that that the Cabal have messed with in more recent years. And the Cabal themselves, there's the whole Vox Obscura mission, which references this thing called the Glycon. And I mean, there's some people that are playing today that probably have no idea what the Glycon is or what the hell Vox Obscura is even referencing. And so that's where I started this idea of, well, let's do the whole thing. Let's just, in the beginning there was the Cabal and it was good. No, yeah. So, how far back does this thing start, Myth?
So we are going all the way back to before the Cabal had even left their immediate star system.
Okay.
So, and I guess that's where we're going to start. So,
do we have a rough time frame for this, or
not
are we going to kind of figure this timeline out as we go?
We're going to have to kind of figure it out. I'm not sure how it relates compared to like Earth years.
Right.
Like I don't know what our year would have been when this stuff was happening for the Cabal. However, the Cabal do live for centuries. They're a very long-lived race. So their ages or eras could have been significantly longer than what we normally think of as an era.
And have they always had that Roman gladiator breakdown of units where they have like a phalanx, they have a colossus, I can't think of what all the centurion.
Mm-hmm.
Have they always been like that, or?
Yeah, so that's actually really cool. I won't say they've always been like that, but for almost all of their recorded history, very, very, very strong Roman influences. Down to the point where I actually had to use, because they're not specifically defined in the lore, but they're words that originated in our Roman culture. So I had to go and see what was this in Rome and then attribute that to what it was in the Cabal Empire.
See, kids, research really is fun. You can do history lessons too while you're doing your research.
Yeah, look at that. You learn all sorts of things.
Exactly.
But
and then you get somebody else to do it for you.
And you get somebody else to do it for
you. Okay, well, let's exactly. That's called bribery. Yeah, no. Okay, so where's this thing? Where do we start then?
The history of the Cabal starts with the earliest known period in Cabal, all of recorded Cabal history, which was known as the Era of Lead. And we actually get LEAD.
periodic table. What is it? LB, BR, BH, HB.
Sure.
I don't remember the symbol for it. I know it's not like LD. It's like something weird, but it's like the Roman word for lead.
Well,
Damn it, Google.
they just call it the era of lead, so that's what I'm going to call it.
Okay, I'm still going to
and
Google what it is because I
you
can't
go
remember
right
what it
ahead.
is.
This comes to us from the item description for the Bell of Conquests, which is the Season of the Chosen artifact. Anyone that doesn't know, all of the artifacts in every season have a lore tab of their own. That when you go in to, like assign your artifact mods and such, there's a lore tab there that usually has some really interesting info. So this one,
I found it.
well, look at you.
It's PB, and it's the Latin word for lead, plumbum.
The era of plumbum.
Of plumbum. I just really wanted to say bum. That's all there was. But no, that really is what it is. PB. And that's the only reason why I remember it. Yeah, exactly. The only reason why I remember things like that is because it's not like LE or LA or LD or anything like that.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
Everything on the periodic table is related to the Latin version of it, which is where, yeah. Okay, history lesson over.
Yeah. So the first lore card we're going to talk about, like I said, comes from the Bell of Conquest, which is the Season of Chosen artifact. And this is read from the perspective of Cryptarch, who's like trying to figure out what the heck this Bell of Conquest is and why it's important. And the lore card is kind of their findings.
Is it Rahul?
I don't know if it ever like signs off as a particular Cryptarch.
Okay.
I'm going to choose to believe that it wasn't Rahul because that just makes me feel better about things.
It's not written from the point of view of a dick.
Of a dick, yeah. So it says, this style of Cabal warbell, known as the Bell of Conquest, is a standout example of the traditional combat artistry known literally as blood etching, popular during the era of lead, which was before the Cabal extended their reach beyond their immediate star system. These objects commemorated martial feats and personal victories, but varied widely in appearance. The Bell of Conquest was a chronicle of the victories of its owner. Unadorned bells were given to warriors at their first blood. Those who wished to challenge a warrior in combat would request their bell and ring it 7 times. So this makes some sense in the context of the season it was released in, because we were literally challenging Cabal war leaders to a duel, essentially.
Yeah.
Well,
that kind of shows what their whole. The Cabal are a very warring type people, and maybe not warring is probably not the right word.
No, I think that's the right word. I think that's the right word. Yeah.
I mean, they're very military might, like who's the strongest, who's the biggest, baddest guy in the room, and we want to kick that guy in the Cabals and take him down, and then challenge that guy to another guy. And they're all about that challenging as a on the battlefield, like they want to meet glory on the battlefield is what I always think of when I think of a Cabal.
No, they very much emphasize martial prowess, being strong, being victorious in battle. All of those are considered, desirable traits in a Cabal citizen. But we'll find that it doesn't necessarily always go that way. But so this is the first earliest record we have, this era of lead. And presumably, because it's stated this is before they, had reached beyond their star system, the era of lead would have consisted of the time of the rise to power of the first Cabal Emperor. And that Cabal Emperor went by the name of Acrius. And we get a little bit of information about Acrius from the weapon named after them, Legend of Acrius. The lore card that. Oh, yep.
This all of this is taking place on their home world of Torabottle, right?
Correct. Yep. All of this
Okay.
is taking place on Torbottle. And it's yeah. So the Legend of Acrius weapon goes as such, and this is another cryptarch kind of deconstructing what the Legend of Acrius was. In this case, we do know which cryptarch it was. It was Tyra Karn from the farm, for anyone that remembers
I like
that.
her. She was nice.
Yeah. So it says, in the Cabal legend, a hero seeks to possess the sun. He succeeds. Then he becomes emperor. The Cabal are not a subtle people. That really is the entire myth. A Cabal named Acrius desires the sun, and he takes it and becomes the first emperor of the Cabal. Other scholars have already noted the parallels and differences with our own Earth myth of Icarus, which famously has a far more humbling ending. I am more interested in how Cabal leaders throughout history have deployed this legend as a rhetorical and political justification for conquest. Among the most relevant such figures is Dominus Gaul himself, who appears to have a personal affinity with the Acrius myth. I must also note here that while linguistic analysis of the Cabal language and its many dialects is incomplete, they do not appear to have a word for the concept of hubris. So by Tyra's telling...
Well, and I think that's very important there at the end. There's a lot of words that the Cabal, they don't have words for these, for some of the things that we use in human dialect, because they don't even have a concept of it. Like in this point, hubris, you know, or even humbleness. You know, I think I don't think they have anything for humbleness or anything. So
well, and we've seen a couple of other interesting tidbits similar to that. Like they have, what was it? They have 7 words for advance and none for retreat or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that was a dialogue in like D1.
Yep.
But I also think that some of this comes from, I don't want to say a prejudice against the Cabal, but maybe. But it also comes from an incomplete understanding of the Cabal language and how the Cabal think. Because we have the same exact Legend of Acrius presented to us by Keitel herself, and she paints it in a very different light. So I want to read her telling of it to kind of show the differences between the translated understandings of Guardians, of Tyra in this case, versus a Cabal.
Some dude with a dictionary, right?
Versus a Cabal actually telling this myth of their very first emperor.
Absolutely.
So this comes from the Praefectus Curus, which is the Season of the Chosen chest piece armor. And it goes as such. Val-Ast sighed. For years, every day has been about survival. Just trying to stay in the fight, but now... He trailed off and grasped the sheets of his bed. A cheap fabric, but still softer than anything he'd felt in years. When you war for so long, peace can become its own struggle, Keitel said. Val-Ast let the fabric fall from his hand. I thought I was Acrius reborn, claiming another son for our kind. He gazed out the porthole of the ship. But I failed. Keitel smiled. I have always loved that tale. She pulled a stool over and sat beside him. Did you know there used to be more to it? Val-Ast shook his head. It's an older version, not as popular in modern times, but I was lucky enough to learn it as a child, the Empress continued. Before Acrius, 3 warriors sought to climb a great mountain and grasp the sun, but a terrible beast stood in their way. The first tried to outwit the beast and sneak through the shadows, but the beast smelled him still and ate the warrior in a single bite. The second tried to escape the beast, crafting a device to harness the wind and soar upwards, but the fickle wind changed its mind and tossed her into the beast's maw. The third warrior challenged the beast head on. Severus in hand, she also fell to the beast's gnashing teeth, but not before her blade tasted its blood. Belest frowned. They all failed? Keitel considered the question. The first two, certainly. They thought battle could be avoided, but the third warrior died with pride and honor. Belest pondered for a moment. Even in defeat, she left her mark on her foe. Keitel nodded. And the next time one of her kin faced it, the beast would be one blow closer to death. Did more come? Volast questioned. Of course, Keitel exclaimed. They were Cabal, and the sun was theirs to claim. Over and over their mightiest fell, but each time another wound was struck, until the day came when a warrior landed the final blow. That warrior was Acrius. Belest frowned. Ever since I was a child, I saw Acrius as a hero. He may have been, Keitel replied as she clasped Belest's hands in hers, but so was the warrior who struck the first blow, and every blow after that. Belest's eyes glistened as he held her grip firmly. Thank you, Empress. Keitel shook her head. My brother, it is the Empire who thanks you.
Holy cow.
So that's Keitel's telling of that.
Dude, that has
story.
so much more to it. Like, holy shit.
So it's like, Tyra's translation is kind of like Cabal want thing, Cabal smash every, all obstacles to get thing, the end.
Yeah.
And Keitel's is granted, Keitel does say this is kind of a older version of the story that is not told
Sure.
As much anymore. But her version is very much a like the people can accomplish great things when they work together over generations.
And that ending too, where he thanks the Empress, and she says, "No, it's the Empire that thanks you." So it's very much the individual Cabal doesn't necessarily mean nothing, but everything that individual Cabal does is for the greater good of the Empire.
Yeah, and to offer some additional context, this particular story of Valast, the Cabal warrior that Keitel is speaking to, she's visiting him in a med bay. He has been crippled. He has had an arm removed, and so he can no longer fight. And he's feeling that, especially for such a militaristic race, he's feeling worthless. He's feeling like, he's failed his people. He can no longer do what they need of him. And she's telling him, no, everything you've done up to this point is already helped everybody. Don't feel that you have failed because you have already made contributions.
Interesting. Very, very much in that same, with that same mindset of the first Emperor. Yeah, no, this is kind of romantic.
It is in the way that a lot of Roman stories are, to be honest. A lot of
I'm digging this.
A lot of the Roman, Roman mythology, as well as the stories we know from Rome of Caesar and the various Praetoriates and all that. Like there's a hint of the dramatic, but also of story being told in everything that they do. So
I like it. I'm digging it.
Yeah, but this is kind of all we really know, though, of this era of lead and this Acrius, the first emperor of the Cabal. And that's all the Cabal seem to know is this myth of this first emperor that rose to power. But they seem to hold Acrius in very high regard, and any warrior, any young Cabal warrior is aspiring to be the next Acrius, the next great, great Cabal to steal their own son, essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
So
To want
this,
thing, kill stuff, get thing.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So this,
They're not a subtle people. They're very straightforward. Cabal want thing, Cabal kill thing, Cabal get thing. Okay, moving on.
so we move on then to the era of conquest, is the next named era in Cabal history. And this was a time of scientific advancement and military expansion to other worlds and civilizations. It's implied that during the era of conquest is when the Cabal found and assimilated the Scion race, who, although became prized for their abilities, were still very much subservient members of Cabal society. They
as like lesser.
Yeah, as lesser beings.
Well, and I don't want to call them slaves, but are they?
I think in a lot of ways, yes. If they're ordered to do something by a Cabal, they don't really have a means to say no. Like, it's expected that they do it. But at the same time, the Cabal understand that Scions have abilities that they do not. And, like, they still value a Scion that shows great ability amongst other Scions, but the greatest Scion will never be on equal social footing as even the lowest Cabal. Is
That's
what
weird.
I get from it, at least.
Like that's a very odd relationship there between the Scions and the Cabal. And I've always been intrigued with that relationship, right? Like I've always looked at the Scions as like, well, their psychic abilities are insanely impressive. I mean, we see that now in the current season, where we're diving into a hive mind mid battle and severing its link to Savathun in its mind. I mean, Scions they're pretty damn cool and they're pretty damn powerful.
They are, but for
a Cabal, they just look at them as just another tool, as another. I don't know that that's why I hesitate to use the word slave. I think that the Cabal think of Scions as a tool, as a device that can do something for them.
Yeah, I don't know that slave is accurate. Like you said, it doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah.
Maybe
because then it would slave has that connotation of like the Scions are being oppressed and that they are actively being.
But
I mean, they are right. Like, and slave may be the right term, but it's like the Scions don't care that they're slaves.
Well, and I don't know. It's hard to say because we don't have a whole lot of record of Scions during this point in time. We're experiencing Scions that's just the way it's always been to them.
That's all they've known. Yeah.
That's all it's ever been. And there have certainly been some revolutionaries amongst the Scion people a number of times that have tried to break free or tried to become independent peoples within the Cabal Empire.
To try to be seen as an equal.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe like indentured servitude is kind of the same, but a little different.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure how to classify them, but seen at least at a society level as not on equal footing with Cabal.
Lesser beings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have some info to support this, as far as the expansion of, as well as some of the things that were happening during the era of conquest. From, the first is just a little snippet from a Season of the Chosen quest description, actually. The quest was called Gilded Conquest, and the description on that quest read, Keitel's emissaries flood Sol with ceremonial gold, a custom during the era of conquest. Conquered worlds were enriched to ease defeat and afford the opportunity to challenge officers for representation within the Cabal's leadership. So this is an interesting idea. During this era of conquest, which presumably is when all the Cabal are being gathered under one banner to then go out and explore their solar system, when a world is defeated during this time, they may be defeated militaristically and politically, but it seems like the Cabal, and we've seen this with the Scions, are more interested in assimilating these worlds into their empire than they are with, like, doing the scorched earth approach and just removing them off the map. And
which is, I mean, that's weird that they didn't do that with the Scions to me. Like, or maybe the Scions didn't. They just looked at it and was like, no, I don't care to be part of it. And then they're like, okay, well, you're just going to be subjugated. So.
Well, I mean, one could argue that the Scions did get assimilated into the society, and that's where they landed. But it seems like the Cabal at least have an understanding of the economic ramifications of laying siege to another society.
Well, in this description of lavishing them with gold.
Yep, conquered worlds are enriched to ease defeat and afford the opportunity to challenge officers for representation within the Cabal's leadership. So if you did well enough and proved yourself, presumably in battle, you would have the opportunity to rise through the Cabal military ranks on your martial prowess, regardless of station, prior to being conquered.
That's kind of cool.
It's a very interesting idea, and I didn't do any specific research on this, so if anyone's familiar, forgive me if I get some things wrong here. But this sounds to me similar to the Roman Empire as we know it. Now I don't know that the Romans necessarily, lavished gold on the places that they just defeated. But generally speaking, I don't remember Romans necessarily, going full fire and brimstone and removing the places they conquered off the map. They had the largest empire in the world for a time, presumably by assimilating those areas into their greater Roman Empire.
Interesting. Yeah. So this is definitely, I mean, and this is lining up with the naming scheme that the Cabals have. So that's I'm seeing a lot of that Roman parallels there.
Yep. And to further those parallels, we get a little peek into how the Cabal governing bodies formed during this era of conquest. So in the earliest days of this new empire, the Cabal Emperor ruled alongside a military aristocracy. That's the word. I'm just stupid.
No, that's a hard word, man. There's some of these words that they put in here. I will look at it 30 times and I'm like, that's not a real word. And then I'll hit Google on it, and Google will just say it for me. And I'm like, oh, that's how because I've always heard the word, and I've never seen the word spelt out.
Well, I saw the beginning of it, and I was trying to say aristocrat, and then I'm like, but that's not the word. And then, anyway, so the Cabal Emperor ruled alongside this military aristocracy known as the Praetoriate, which allowed the people, which very specifically the Praetoriate would didn't care about the general citizens. Its main goal was make the legions grow, make our military force bigger.
Okay.
And the Praetoriate, again, if my rudimentary understanding is correct, is the same exact phrase used to describe the Roman Senate, which sat alongside the Roman Emperor to decide things of political nature. So again, another
Yeah.
parallel.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, I don't know if in the Romans' case the Praetoriate was military or entirely military leaders, but in this case, the Praetoriate of the Cabal is every member is the head of a legion of the Cabal. And so that's
Gotcha.
where we get things like the Red Legion and the what was it, the Sand Dancers, and all the other various Cabal legions that we've come across in our time in the Destiny universe. They all have like a house that they belong to, and each of those houses had a head that sat at this Praetoriate. And of course,
Similar houses similar to like Fallen, right? With the Fallen, and they have their head Kel, but and then
only
they're
in
like,
that they're divided. And
okay,
that I think is an
gotcha.
important distinction, because like someone that is of the Red Legion wouldn't have a rivalry with another house. Like they are all very
Gotcha.
much part of the Cabal Empire.
Yeah.
But they listen to different they take their orders from different commanders. And
Sure.
the commander of each legion that sits on the Praetoriat is going to have their own legion's best interests in mind. But overall, they all answer to this, the emperor and whatever
the emperor, yeah,
decisions made by the Praetoriat as a whole are.
Yeah.
So
okay.
The Fallen are a little more like separate bodies of government. And this is all one body of government that has
one single
portions.
Yeah. Okay.
And we hear about the Praetoriate and a particular viewpoint on the Praetoriate from actually the Cabal booklet that came with the Destiny 2 Vanilla Collector's Edition. And this is written from the point of view of Calus. And he writes, "In ages past, the Emperor ruled alongside the Praetoriate, the degenerate and venal military aristocracy. The legions made an iron wall around them, and the people suffered so that the legions could grow." So again, he's parroting that they didn't care about the common citizen. If you were not a member of the legion, they did not have your best interest in mind.
Yeah.
So, speaking of Calus, this kind of leads us into what is referred to as the Foundation Age, which is the rise of Calus as emperor.
And it's interesting to me to think that there was something before Calus, because even I mean, unless if you're going through and digging through these lore entries, as far as what you're exposed to in game, at least what you've been exposed to in game since Destiny 2, it's always been about Calus. It's always, Calus is the emperor, all this. So to find out that there truly is more to it than that, like that's I love that. Calus is.
They had eras and ages prior to Calus. They had who knows how many emperors between Acrius and Calus. So it's interesting. And I know they're very much based on the Roman Empire, but that particular like longevity kind of makes me think of like the Chinese empire, where
like the dynasties.
The different dynasties and each leader kind of made their own section on the timeline that's sometimes named after them or their particular war they presided over. And the Cabal, at least in how their history is written, is very similar in that regard. Even though their society is definitely very Roman.
Yeah.
But so
I hesitate to make the I'm gonna make it. They're Klingons.
I mean, you call it potato, I call it potato.
Yeah. One guy calls it Klingon, another guy calls it Cabal.
Science fiction in general takes influences from many different places, and it's fine.
This is why we have things like witch elves and daemons, so people can copyright things and say, look, we have elves and demons, and then you look at them and go, no, Games Workshop, you do not. You have elves and daemons.
They have the little squiggles above their letters. They're different.
Exactly. This one has a dot and a squiggle. Ha ha! No, that's no.
I had to laugh. Right. There was a band that they came out with an album that it was, the album name was Anomaly, but the A's had little like circles above them. And they were not foreign by any means. And in an interview, they were asked like, "What is, is Anomaly the correct pronunciation?" They're like, "Yeah, that sounds, that's what we intended." And they're like, "Okay, what are the symbols above the A's?" And they're like, "Oh, we just thought it looked cool."
Yeah,
same thing.
Yep. Yeah.
But
technically, the spelling of my name, Ztorialis, the O is supposed to have two little dots over it, but I don't even know what that would do to the word of it. So that I just thought it looked cool.
Well, there you go. Say it. Plus,
they
figure
don't allow
out how
special
to,
characters.
Yeah, say figure out how to find that on a PlayStation keyboard.
It's Alt 145.
Oh well, you did. Good job.
Yeah, suck it. Yeah, no, I think it's 145. I can't remember. It's like 145 or 147. I don't remember. Yeah. But yeah, it's one of the alt characters on an ASCII keyboard.
But we digress.
Not ASCII, QWERTY keyboard.
QWERTY, yeah.
We never digress here. We never tangent.
Of course not.
You fool.
This train only has one track.
Exactly.
So Calus, the foundation
that track just
age
may go in circles a
of
few
Calus. It's every train set I've ever played with.
Oh shit.
Foundation age of Calus.
Oh, you go. My mind just got blown by the thought that every train set really is just a circle.
So Calus became emperor of the Cabal. It's not, or at least I could not find a recording of how emperors are chosen. Perhaps it's through martial feats. Perhaps they're voted in by the Praetoriate, or it's a bloodline thing. Not clear as to how they decide who their next emperor is going to be. Yeah, they just pluck another sun out of the sky.
They just pluck another. Shit. Yes, that's it.
But for some vex reason, Calus became emperor. And he was very different than every emperor before him. Because where many of the previous emperors had, progressed the Cabal society in a very militaristic way, Calus saw those militaristic ways as martial. He saw martial power as being a useful tool, but he didn't think society as a whole should be centered around that.
So this is a whole new way of thinking then.
Entirely new way of thinking.
Interesting.
And Calus,
we all know how well that goes in history.
All right. But Calus proclaims a few things himself, again in the Cabal booklet that came with the Destiny 2 Collector's Edition, the original one. And he says this: "Know that I am Calus, the last and greatest emperor of the Cabal. For centuries I led the revels of my empire, and the stars themselves burnt sweet and clear. I have seen more than 1,000 years of war and trouble. I have fought the Sindhu, put down the Clips, and interpreted the mad prophecies of the Oxa machine. But might is not enough, for through all of this struggle, I kept the bonfires lit and the sweet wine flowing. For to be emperor, you see, is to be the model of perpetual joy, A good ruler must live the life that everyone craves, for if an emperor cannot be happy, then what hope has anyone? When I took the throne, my people bled to feed a corrupt military elite. I chased those praetoriate scum from their dens of antiquity. I offered their stolen riches back to my cabal, and I vowed to celebrate our existence in the highest luxury, to set an example for my empire. No privileged few, but decadence for all. He makes it sound pretty nice.
Oh yeah,
Just saying,
dude. I mean, he's all about it, man. He's like, I'm emperor. Emperor should live like a god. Full stop.
Well, not only that, he's saying emperor should live like a god, emperor should want for nothing, and I should make the people want for nothing. And despite whatever troubles I have, I should always be happy so that everyone else has hope that they too can be happy. Is
Yeah.
it very like Dionysus is the vibe I get, the god of wine. Granted,
I was
that's
going to
Greek,
say, I'm
but
Bacchus. Yeah, I am Bacchus, god of wine. Yeah, that's literally, as soon as you said it, that's instantly what I was thinking, which then instantly went to an episode of The Office where it's like, I am Bacchus, god of wine, and they're pouring wine all over each other at the pool party at Robert California's place, and then
yeah.
the other one's like, and I am Bacchus's friend. Yeah.
Yeah, that very much the same like visual that I get from this.
Yep.
However, we learn that Calus writes and or edits Cabal historical text during his time as emperor, specifically to paint himself in a better light. And so many of the things we read from him or from a time that he would have had access to those records, gotta take with a little grain of salt.
Sure.
And they talk about this, actually, the Cryptarchs do, in another piece of the Season of Chosen. Specifically, this is the lore card for the quest item, the Hammer of Proving, which sat in all of our quest logs for ever and
Literally
never went
ever.
Away.
Nobody even did anything with it for like 6 seasons.
It was bad.
Yeah.
But it had a lore card. Who knew? And that lore card has this paragraph. Currently, our crypto-archaeologists cannot pinpoint the date of Calus's rise to power within the Cabal Empire. Like much of the Cabal Empire's ancient history, many dates and facts were altered to cast a favorable light upon the former emperor and his rise to power. Most of the Cryptarchy's information comes from post-Calus records, scoured from archival remains on Red Legion vessels and forays into the Leviathan. As such, its records' historic context must be marked for questionable accuracy. All that is to say, Calus thought he was a big deal.
Yeah.
Calus wanted everyone else to also think he was a big deal. And even if something didn't quite show off him as the, benevolent god of wine and revelry, he would just change it so that it did.
Yeah. Yep.
So that, again, it's
when you're emperor, like that, I mean, as shitty as that sounds, when you're emperor, who the fuck's gonna stop you, right? Like,
yeah. It's very much one of those, like, this book is full of lies that the Book of Sorrow had.
Oh yeah. Oh my god, yes.
It's a hey, on one hand, it's smart.
Bungie is the most smartest people in writing things and being able to write themselves out of it while still writing the thing.
Yeah.
To just say, this is full of lies. Boom. You can now literally make whatever the fuck you want. And then for this one to be like, yeah, if something happened a certain way and he didn't like it, he just changed it. So whatever you're reading, take it with a grain of salt. Like, come on.
Yeah, no, and we see that, this is jumping ahead a little bit, but we see that in I believe, a Season of Opulence, where Calus is talking about or has prophecies. He's dictating prophecies to his scions to write down that are about all of the great things that are going to happen once a guardian becomes his shadow, and and brings about the end of the universe, essentially. And as we know, none of those came true, because we were kind of here for that season, and we didn't kill Marosov or make Petrovenge a shadow,
and we're still here.
We're still here. And the one guardian that was canonically Calus's shadow died horribly.
Yeah.
So, little pinch of salt.
Maybe Calus doesn't know everything.
Maybe.
Yeah, tu Brute? Yeah. You also mentioned Oxot, right?
Oxa. The Oxa machine. Yeah.
Oxa machine.
And that is a very important thing to take note of. So the Oxa machine was created by, and I think can only be used by, scions. And it was a machine that, from my understanding, was very similar to what the Future War Cult in the city used to view the future, or view possible futures.
I was going to say, are we talking Vextech future prediction machines?
Well, there's nothing to suggest it's Vex created, that the Oxa machine is Vex created. It is, I believe it is originally Scion created, and from the tellings is better at making prophecies than anything that we have drummed up from the Vex.
Really?
Now, granted, we are trying to kind of, slap some Vex tech together to make something that we can use. We being Future Oracle.
The one time, I guess every time we've tried to do something with it, something has gone horribly wrong. Let's see.
People just go a little insane.
And Cade tried to figure it out in the D2 vanilla by making a little portal thing, and then got trapped in the Vex network. Ikora was so pissed at the Vex during the season of Undying that she was like, yeah, we're just going to put a Vex portal right here in the center of the city. I mean, literally right behind me, middle of the Vanguard, whatever, it's cool. Yeah, that didn't turn out bad at all. Yeah, and then, obviously, Future War Cult. Hey, let's do that again! Yeah.
So, it's actually suggested, from what I'm seeing here, I brought up some additional information about the Oxa machine in particular. From what I'm seeing, it's suggested that the Vex had kept information about the Oxa machine, and it becomes kind of a chicken and egg thing. Like, did the Vex find the Oxa machine and then use that to make their own prediction engines? Or is it just they're keeping tabs on a rival kind of thing?
Dude, I like that chicken and the egg idea with this thing, right? Because that would totally play into Vex, right? Like, Vex exists at all times. So, like, oh my god, that's a... I like that.
So, we'll talk a little bit more about the Oxa machine, and in particular, one of the Scion scientists around that. But for now, just know it was a thing.
Yeah.
So, Calus has come into power as Emperor of the Cabal, and his very first act as Emperor is, because he sees himself as like, I need to bring in a new way of life. I need to be a one-man revolution, essentially. So as Emperor, he captures the consul, who is the head of the Praetoriate, kind of the like the same way that there's a Speaker of the House or whatnot, like
Uh,
not
yeah,
necessarily has more power than other legions, but is kind of the directing figure of the Praetoriate.
sure.
Named the consul. He captures the consul, castrates the consul, and then
Whoa,
exiles him.
whoa,
Uh,
that escalated quickly.
yeah, yeah. So we get this information from the Leviathan raid weapon inaugural address, and it reads as such: My first act as emperor was to send the consul into the wasteland. The golden sun would burn away his corrupt form, a fitting symbol for the revolution that was to be my reign. I wanted a desert of pure white sand to stage my celebration. It took them 3 days to clear the wasteland of any stones or plant of offending color, but when they were done, it was a perfect canvas for the violet pavilion. We recreated my court in every detail beneath the glinting sun. The first act of my coronation was to have the consul kneel at my feet. He was a pathetic figure, stripped of title, rank, and clothing. He would never wield power again, and would beget no heir. I made sure of that personally. I had only a single word for him: run. So as much as Calus is about like keep the wine flowing, party time, like if he doesn't like
Don't
you,
don't fuck with me.
you're in trouble.
Jesus. So stripped the desert of everything of offending color. So it's literally just a sea of white sand.
Yep. Nothing but white sand, because he saw that as he needed it to be a perfect canvas for his violet pavilion that apparently was also built before all of this.
Yeah.
In the middle of this desert,
a complete replica.
just to exile this guy. Just to kick him out into the desert and say like, on your own, bye-bye.
Just to cut the old cabals loose, as they say.
God.
That was pretty good, wasn't it? I was proud of myself for that
one. Anyway.
So Calus exiles.
He
first thing he does, cuts his balls off, puts him in the desert, says run.
Yep, and he exiles
completely
the
naked.
Yep, the head of the Praetoriat, intending for him to, starve or die of thirst or just be roasted by the sun. And
yeah,
he sees it as a death sentence, essentially. But at the very least, he will never hold any power ever again. And the very next thing he does, now that he's dealt with the head of the Praetoriat, is he's going to go assassinate the remaining Praetoriat. And we see, or we see the telling of this in another Leviathan raid weapon called Alone as a God. And it reads...
Well, real quick, before we keep going with the Leviathan ones, for those of you that don't know, there was a raid called the Leviathan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that shit got real.
Yeah.
When D2 launched, the first raid was called Leviathan, and we're gonna discuss that more later on.
Yeah.
But all of these entries come from the weapons that you could earn as rewards from doing that raid, which I personally really hope to see a return of Leviathan. I still remember my first encounter there. It was awesome. Yeah, I loved the Leviathan. And the Leviathan raid itself was kind of where Myth and I met. Like this we started doing these it was right when they were starting to sunset the Leviathan, and we started going through. We were doing Spire of Stars, the prestige versions of them, and yeah, fun times.
Yeah, no, the Leviathan is the raid, is the name of the raid, but it's also a very important place that we are going to talk about in this series. Not only to it comes up a number of times. We'll just say that. But yeah,
Yep.
it was the raid location. Anything that I'm saying, Leviathan raid weapon or Leviathan raid armor or something, like that, it came from that raid, which is unfortunately no longer in the game, at least at time of recording. But yeah,
For
hopefully comes back.
now.
For now, yeah.
Bruh.
But so, but yeah, the Alone is a God, which was the sniper rifle, I believe, from the Leviathan, has this lore card on it that talks about what happened to the rest of the Praetoriate. My Imperial Guard marched into the temple where the Senate convened. They formed a protective circle from which I might bestow the gift of my address. From this day forward, I shall take up all of the empire into my embrace, for I am the father of the empire, as I am father to all creation. I will suffer no tired institution nor petty bureaucrat to stand between me and my children. I am the perfect, loving God, and all will tremble to know me. The Imperial Guard charged their railguns in perfect unison. So already we're seeing
Yeah.
Calus is kind of full of himself.
Oh, 100%.
He has gone from previously telling us like I was this greatest of all emperors, and I brought revel and prosperity to my kingdom, and now we're seeing that he's proclaiming himself a god of his people, or of all creation. He says, and he is a perfect and loving God,
That's
as
a
he
that's a
guns down
that's
an
a
entire group of people.
I was going to say that's a bold statement to make while you're gunning down the entire Senate. Like,
Right? Like,
okay,
I mean,
how well, and that's an interesting thought, right? Like, to see this, like I'm trying to think of this and view this through the eyes of a Cabal citizen, right? But like, what even is a Cabal citizen? Like, what is a Cabal civilian? Is there such
yeah.
thing as a Cabal civilian? Are all Cabal just instant, like, you're born into a militaristic peoples, so you are therefore a military person from the ground, like from the day you're born? Like, that's an interesting thought. And you know, in any society that you wouldn't have that wouldn't be militaristic, you'd see this as the act of a madman. Like, this guy's nuts. He just gunned down the entire ruling governing party, and we might need to do something about him. Whereas like here, it's just him being the emperor. Like, oh yeah, no,
Yeah,
go Calus.
and actually we have a little bit of info that might give us an idea of what that everyday life might be like. Now I do think a large majority of Cabal citizenry is militaristic, is in the
Sure.
military in some regard. However, there are still pieces of society that need to exist for things to progress. Like, you need to have people that produce food. You need to have people that facilitate trade. All of that kind of stuff. And
Counterpoint.
mhm.
Counterpoint. If you are a militaristic type people, you never have to produce anything. You never have to trade anything. You just go take it.
Well, if you are purely rolling into a neighboring peoples and taking what they have for your own, sure, but it seems like the Cabal's MO was to roll into a neighboring people and then say, you're part of us now. And in actuality, they're
Okay.
bringing in more people to feed at that point.
That makes more sense.
So one of the little snippets we have that gives us an idea of what everyday life might be like on Torbottle at this time. It also comes from the Destiny 2 Vanilla Collector's Edition lore book, where Calus has written about a number of prominent figures during his time as emperor, and one of them is of very humble beginnings. And he refers to them as the confidant Iskal of Fantor. And Calus writes this: "Poor, sweet Iska, who sold me tea. In the first days of my great purge against the Praetoriate, we moved the capital to Torbottle to be near the people. Every day I would go out to parade myself in public view, buying in the markets and gifting to the poor so that all would know I was unintimidated and still of vigorous appetite. At the end of my route, I would stop by Iska's cart to sniff at his basket of tea. He'd listen to my troubles, who I defended among the housekeepers, where I had ached and how my allergies reacted to the dry plain air. In all things an emperor must be excessive, and with Iska I was excessive in my trust, and my prices, considering how well I paid him for the petals I used in my nectar. Iska was a poor businessman and simple, but he never shared a word I said. I am told he still sets up his tea cart on the same corner. I am told that Iskal of Fantor sells his tea to a clique of Dominus General Staff, soldiers who tease him with the nickname Imperial Informant, as if he sends word to me in my exile." So that was written, obviously, during a time where Calus was no longer emperor. But it is a little peek into what general life might be there. You know, they have a marketplace of sorts, apparently.
Well, to me, this feels very, Arabic. This feels it sounds like Torbottle is a very desert-like place.
The dry plains, yeah. And this does bring about an interesting point that I have seen talked about before. Torbottle, I think, is both the name of the planet and the city.
Why not? Why not? To make Cabal history even more confusing. Right? Why not?
But because here he talks about we moved the capital to Torbottle to be near the people. I suppose he could literally mean they moved the capital to the planet Torbottle. But we definitely have heard Keitel in the current season and previous refer to it as like the home world of the Cabal, or at least seemingly referring to it that
way. Grain of salt with Calus.
This is true, but it seems like a weird thing to lie about. Is it a city or a planet?
He's emperor. He can do whatever the fuck he lie about whatever he wants to lie about, right? Like,
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong.
The sun was made of cheese. Okay, thanks, Calus.
But I think it brings a very interesting perspective of this city marketplace that he parades down and showers the various vendors in seemingly overpaying them for their goods to just kind of show off how well off he is doing, and to be spreading that a little bit.
I was going to say, and then turning around and taking those goods that he's buying and giving them to the poor, like to show the poor, look, I'm a not only am I a glorious emperor, I'm a generous emperor. Like praise me, worship me. Like he's very much trying to be that godlike figure. That one man revolution, as he puts it, yeah.
So yeah, interesting little peek into that. In addition to, in his first years or his first becoming of emperor, in addition to dealing with the Praetoriate and the consul, he does something that's kind of interesting. So he recognizes that Cabal militaristic rituals are ingrained in their culture, and understands that just coming in and saying, "No, we're not doing that anymore," probably not going to go over too well.
I mean, you're gonna have a lot of confused people.
So what he does is very smart, very cunning. Is he goes, "Well, yeah, we'll still do that, but we're going to add some rules." And we're going to add some more rules, and we're going to add some more rules until eventually no one wants to do these things anymore. And we see this with another section of the Hammer of Proving from which was the Season of Chosen quest item. And it goes on to tell us this. In the early Foundation Age, the rite of proving was the primary means by which disputes were settled among free Cabal, much like how the Crucible was formed among the Guardians of the Last City. During the proving, two Cabal, or their appointed representatives, would air their grievances in a public forum, and one or both would declare a challenge. These Cabal would battle one another to submission or to the death, often the latter, and the winner would be seen as the right and lawful party in the dispute. Calus disapproved, but knew that overturning a centuries-old tradition would be an unpopular decision. Instead, the emperor introduced incrementally draconic and Byzantine bylaws into the proving. One of these stated that if a battle ended with a tie or double submission, an impartial or arbiter would decide the outcome. This arbiter would carry a symbol of imperial office, a gold-plated hammer etched with strange runes drawn from Calus's own personal occult obsessions. The Hammer of Proving. Whereas an impartial arbiter was a widely accepted change to the tradition, Calus abused it to push his own agenda. Over time, the proving arbiter was granted more and more autonomy to settle battles, eventually gaining the right to enter a battle on their own under a number of flimsy justifications, such as balancing unfair matches, or ending matches that went overly long, or punishing a proving participant who owed a financial debt to the Empire. The proving arbiter became such a disruptive force that within a century the right of proving had fallen out of usage, as the law and restrictions around the right made it an untenable solution. Ultimately, the rule of proving arbiter was retired, and the hammer was returned to Calus's vaults, before it somehow ended up in the hands of guardians. So this is like some political scheming going on here. Dude, to change things.
This is
how
reminding me of. This is making me think of 1920s and 1930s Germany.
Whereas, like the addition of rules that are then twisted to a particular outcome.
Yeah, twisted for the person implementing the rules. Like, oh well, we're gonna put a rule in here that says, we need to keep an eye on everyone of a certain ethnicity, and then that gets twisted into, oh well, now we need to gather them up. Now we need to, like, I mean, that's obviously that's an extreme, but that's what Calus is doing. He's literally implementing these rules and coming up with more and more restrictions on this proving. Now, granted, in this telling of it, he's just trying to do it to get rid of the proving, right? Like that's his whole goal,
right,
to get rid of the proving. But in the process of doing so, having his arbiter be able to just enter the battle and just be like, yeah, this battle's taking too long, I'm going to kill you both, and then I'm the decider of what happens, and I can make whatever rule I want while I'm deciding this. Like this is very much a like it's a what would you call that? A double positive for Calus is what I'm thinking.
Win-win.
on one side, he's getting rid of the proving. On the other side, he's also pushing forward his own political agenda.
Yeah, he's asserting power. And they even say, like, they would, the arbiter would find reasons to, decide against a participant who owed a financial debt to the Empire.
Yeah. And in that instance, right? Like two guys had an argument and they're like, all right, well, I duel you. And the other guy's like, all right, I duel you too. and they show up and they beat each other, and the guy that owes a bunch of money happens to win. He's like, all right, sweet, yeah, you owe me money now, and I'm gonna go. And then the emperor just comes by and goes, oh yeah, well you owe me money, so suck it, both of you. You both lose. Like that. Yeah, this is. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Well,
Calus may not be as grow fat from wisdom, strength,
grow fat with strength. Yeah.
luxury, grow luxurious with fat. I don't know.
We were there and then we left.
Yes.
Yeah. So obviously, Callus understands the necessity for a military. Like, he's not just going to get rid of the military, but he wanted to get rid of the militaristic leadership as it stood with the Praetoriate, so that he would be the sole decider on things.
Well, and in that sense, is he just trying to do away with like the militaristic way of life?
Now he says yes, or he would imply that yes, he wants to do away with this old school like Spartan thought process. Yeah. He wants to make things, a time of essentially a Cabal Renaissance in a lot of ways.
That's what I was thinking. It's like he's wanting to transition into like a Grecian like time of thought, time of reflection, time of advancement.
No, yeah. I think in a lot of ways that is what he's saying he's trying to do, at least. But he still understands.
There it is, miss.
Yeah. He's saying
the Greek intern has just reared its ugly head.
It's like,
Not that Greek intern has an ugly head or anything. We get it. You have a majors in Greek philosophy, and you're trying to use it. We applaud you for that. Getting a little redundant, though. Maybe mix it up a bit.
Well, let's not pretend like the Roman era did not have its own share of art and philosophy and sciences that were
that's true
explored during that time. I'm not going to attribute all of that to Greece by any means.
No, I meant the whole thing that there's definitely someone at Bungie that's a Greek intern. That's That's not a Greek intern, an intern at Bungie that has a majors in Greek philosophy, and that's why we keep seeing these Greek philosophy things throughout the entire lore of all of Destiny, because he's just trying. The poor guy's just trying to find a use for his degree, and he's found it. Maybe change it up a bit, though. Maybe just a little bit.
So, we've seen Calus's kind of way of dismantling this militaristic culture. However, he still needs a military. They still need to be able to defend themselves, and they do continue to assimilate other cultures into themselves via conquest. Like that hasn't
now,
changed.
Now, at this time, have the Scions been integrated yet?
Yeah, so the Scions were integrated prior to Calus's rise.
That's what I thought. Like I feel like we kind of glossed over that so quick. Like it was just like, hey, Scions, yeah, they're a thing. They were assimilated. All right, move on.
So yeah, the Scions were part of the Cabal Empire since the era of conquest, since prior to Calus's rise as emperor. So presumably have been a part of the Cabal Empire for centuries by the time Calus even comes to power.
Yeah. Well, and Calus even says himself, like in his own writing, over the course of a century, the proving was done away with. So that where you were talking about earlier, that Cabal lived for a very long time, like they have a very long lifespan. I mean, we're seeing it here, and so it's that same thought of like, what is a century to an immortal, or what is a century to someone who lives for and we brought that up during when we were doing our Books of Sorrow stuff with Oryx living for his reign for 1 billion years. Like what is 100 years to a guy who's lived for 1 billion? That's like a day to him. So yeah,
Right.
that's interesting that it has been such a long period of time that even the Cabal aren't even. It doesn't even seem like the Cabal even worry about it being a long period of time or seem to care. It's like, yeah, we did this and then this and then this and yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, but they're still expanding. The Cabal Empire is still ever expanding. And they need military to do it. And so what Calus does is a lot of lip service, essentially, from my perspective. He goes and to the military legions that were previously under the rule of the Praetoriate, and he rounds them all up, and he says, everyone that is a soldier of the Cabal is now a free citizen of the Empire. You can do whatever you want to do. You have complete freedom, the same as anyone else in the Empire, which seems to implicate that if you were part of the military before, you didn't have that same level of freedom.
Yeah.
So he grants citizenship to all of his military legions that were previously under the Praetoriate, and says, you're no longer, you can remain in your legions, your families and your brotherhoods of Red Legion and I think, like I said before, I think one was like the Sand Dancers, and there was multiples. You can remain under those flags, but you are not going to answer to a Praetoriate anymore. You're going to answer to a leader that I appoint to be the high commander of all legions. So taking the Senate that was the Praetoriate and condensing it into one person, who of course answers to Calus.
Yeah. I mean, it's easier to manipulate one person than it is to manipulate 50.
Right.
I mean, that's just simple math there.
So we get a little bit of information about this, and him doing this in, again, that collector's edition lore book from the original Destiny 2, where Calus says, in again self-narrating about this event, he says, I cast down the Praetoriate. I gave the legions the right to speak as citizens, but I still needed armies, and armies need a leader. So I chose a combat veteran to serve as Evocate General, was the title that he gave them. And the name of that general was Uman Arath, Primus of all legions. Now, Calus goes on to say that he did not trust Uman, but thought that he could bring her around to his way of thinking about things, as far as culturally where the Cabal should be going.
Okay.
And suffice to say, during their conversations, she didn't budge much on her viewpoint. And her name is going to be very important later.
Maybe it's not so easy to manipulate one.
It's not so easy to manipulate a single, like, hardened veteran with centuries of military service.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just saying.
Maybe throw a scion in there. I don't know. No, because those aren't people.
Yeah, those aren't people. Come on.
It's so messed up to think of it like that, but that's what it is.
That is their viewpoint on it. So, while all of this is happening, there's another character who is being born who becomes very important to Cabal history. And this is a character by the name of Gaul.
Bum, 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 bum.
Which, if you haven't played original Destiny 2, you may not know who that is, honestly.
Oh, shit.
Which is kind of crazy.
Wow.
So we're going to go over the history of Gaul because it is part of the history of the Cabal. But suffice to say that he was the big bad for the original Destiny 2 campaign. He did a lot of not so nice things to us and to the Traveler, and all that fun stuff. All of that was started with Gaul.
Gary.
Gary, yeah.
Something with the G. Greg? Gary? G. Something with the G.
Yeah. But he is just being born at this point in time.
Holy cow.
And Gaul gives us a description of himself and what happened during his birth, because as many villains tend to have, he does not have a happy childhood.
I want to find the villain who had a happy childhood and still decided,
still
be a bad guy.
Fuck it.
Fuck it. Fuck it. World domination? Absolutely. Mass genocide on a galactic scale? Fuck it. Let's go.
Man, 0 to 25 was real great, but after my 26th birthday, I was like, nah, let's just redo it all.
Like, screw this.
Yeah.
Screw this. Born with a golden spoon in my mouth, and I got to 26 and was like, burn it all.
Start over.
26, they gave me my 15th Lamborghini, and I just couldn't take it anymore.
I want a Lambo. Well, maybe not with current gas prices.
Oh, shit.
But
so Gaul.
So Gaul, actually, this is not from a lore card. This is from dialogue in the original vanilla Destiny 2 campaign that Gaul gave himself to the speaker at the time. Who I guess you may not know who that is either if you haven't played Destiny 2 in the original. Needless to say, a very important figure in the tower. We'll leave it at that. And he says, I was born an outcast, a runt. As is custom, I was cast aside and left for dead. I was taken in by an old scholar, himself disgraced, who saw in me something redeemable. He raised me, taught me, trained me, and in return I would become a vehicle for his vengeance against an empire that failed him, that failed itself. Rejection, ridicule, torment, it all made me stronger. I gave everything to win not just acceptance, but glory. Beneath my mask is the face of devotion and sacrifice. So Gaul did not have a good time with things in Tor Battle. He was, as he said, he was a runt, which, being very culturally a race that values strength. It sounds like if you are born, boxing under a certain weight class, they just kick you out.
Yep. Yep.
And
heavyweights are nothing.
Right? And it's not described in this bit in particular, but from Gaul's character model in game, as well as from further descriptions of him, he is also an albino Cabal. So he had his difference in coloration as well as his difference in size, and yeah, they didn't want anything to do with him.
And no one in the history of anything has ever been oppressed over the color of their skin.
There's a few parallels here, just a few.
Yeah. I may be Team Gaul for a little bit.
So, but he's taken in, he's abandoned and taken in by an old scholar who is also disgraced, who also had the empire turn against him and turn against itself in his eyes. And he saw in Cabal a chance for revenge.
Do we know anything about this scholar?
Well, in
Bum.
in the Destiny 2 campaign, he is referred to as Consul. So, for anyone that hasn't put the pieces together yet, yes, this is the same Consul that was originally abandoned by Calus out in the desert, presumed to be dead, or presumed to soon be dead. He survived. He survived long enough to become a father, essentially, for this runt albino Cabal.
Wait a second. Is this the guy that we keep calling Mr. Waternoose?
Yes, that is him.
God dang it. All right, so now some more history. So for those of you that don't know, since that seems to be our theme tonight of things that people that we keep referencing that nobody has a clue what they are anymore because they don't exist in game anymore. In the D2 campaign, this whole time that you see these cutscenes with Gaul talking to the speaker, there's another person that's talking to him and kind of egging him on and kind of like, hey, get back to the task on hand. Claim this. You are Dominus. You are Gaul. You are Cabal. You're the great. Like you're supposed to be everything. The voice actor sounds like the same voice actor for Mr. Waternoose from Monsters Inc. And so canonically, up until literally this point right now, Myth and I have referred to him as such. He is Mr. Waternoose because he's never given a name while you're playing the D2 campaign, the vanilla campaign. And now that we've put these pieces together, and now his name is his name Consul?
No, that's just his title, so we still don't have his name. So Mr. Waternoose works.
Dang it! He's still Mr. Waternoose.
He's still Mr. Waternoose. Yeah.
No, he's Consul Waternoose now.
Consul Waternoose. Ooh. Yeah.
Promotion. God dang it.
But yeah, so you have these two outcasts that find each other, and one, raises the other, and trains Gaul, and by nature of being the consul of the previous Praetoriate, which was a governing body made up of military veterans, presumably the consul knows his way around, being a soldier, and can pass that info along to Gaul. And so he raises him.
Damn, Cabal are old.
Cabal are real old. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Because presumably this guy was a lot, was an adult Cabal to hold the title of consul, and if we don't have exact comparisons, but if Gaul was found as an infant after the rite of proving had already fallen out of favor, that's at least a century.
Yeah. Damn. Okay. Yeah.
So the next kind of era in Cabal history doesn't officially have a name, but I'm going to refer to it as the Cabal quote-unquote golden age of Calus.
Ooh.
And
not like Traveler came golden age, but like,
no,
as I am Bacchus, god of wine, meet my friend who is also god of gold, golden age.
Yes, that's kind of golden age. So Calus,
I'm a little bit of a fan of both of these types of golden ages, whether it be technologically awesome or if it just be, drink and grow fat and get stupid.
Yeah,
I still think I'm getting this quote wrong. We were there and then we left.
And then we left. So Calus, like stated before, believes he's brought about this time of unparalleled prosperity in the Cabal during his reign as emperor. And he says as such, and says some of the exploits that the Cabal Empire had while under his rule. And we see this in some of the Spire of Stars raid armor, which is another raid that took place in the Leviathan. And so if we look at the Ensign Shade gloves from the Spire of Stars raid, they say, "The Cabal I remember built wonders. The vitality gifting red eyes, the systems spanning mobility of the ninth bridge. I count the far-seeing Oxa machine. Our every need we had answered. Everyday life was a paradise. Before my exile, the mother system never wanted for anything." And he continues in the Turris Shade gloves, also from the Spire of Stars. "The Cabal I knew were natural leaders, with the ability to drive cultivation. They excelled at war was the result of their gentility. Our debate chambers were glorified as much as our battlefields." So again, driving that idea of we accomplished all these great feats. Now we don't know, us the player don't know what some of these things are, to be honest. The vitality gifting red eyes, I could find zero reference for what that is.
The only thing I can think of is like the Cabal, the Scions have little red lasers that they point at you, but that's from their guns, so maybe not.
I don't think that's
maybe
vitality
all Cabal
gifting.
have red eyes. Like maybe the red eyes is what's giving them the extra light. I don't know.
That could be.
I don't know.
That could be. But they talk about the system spanning mobility of the ninth bridge. Again, we don't have any official, information on that.
That's got to be hyperspeed, right? Like that's got to be.
That seems to
some
be
type
a
of
transportation between systems or something like that. And the far-seeing
well, and I'm curious if it's
machine.
Right, like the whole Ox machine. I'm curious if the travel thing. Well, no, because they're always in ships. I was thinking of the what the hell's it called? The thing that they use in Marvel.
The Hoarfrost.
Is that what I'm thinking of?
The
Bifrost.
Yeah, Bifrost. Yeah.
Wait, what's the Hoarfrost?
I don't know. That sounds familiar though.
Are we just making shit up here? Maybe.
No, it's a thing. It's a thing.
Okay. Okay.
It's crystalline water vapor formed in clear, still weather. So
okay, so it has nothing to do with traveling.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the Bifrost. I was thinking of like because it says like the ninth bridge or whatever. Like that's made me think of. But that could also, ninth bridge could be like, the ninth level of light speed or whatever, warp 9 or whatever. Yeah. So we always see them in ships. Everywhere we've seen them, they've traveled in some sort of spaceship. They haven't just appeared in front of us. I mean, hell, they use Cabal drop pods where they just slam a giant bowling ball into their landing zone, and then it dematerializes and a bunch of Cabal hops out of it. So yeah,
to great effect most of the time though.
Yeah.
So, but no, the one thing he mentions here is the far-seeing Oxa machine. So I want to talk a little bit more about the Oxa machine.
Who is Oxot and what is Oxa?
Right. Anyone that wonders about that little tidbit from the Insight Terminus strike, well, we're gonna tell you about it.
Who is Sun 12?
That I am not going to tell you about. I mean, I'll tell you who it is, but that's not much else because that's a long story.
That's another episode. That is another episode.
So, at some point in the past, the Cabal Empire conquered the Scion race. We talked about that. The Scion race had an Oxa machine at the time of being conquered, which was destroyed by the Cabal during the invasion. Centuries later, during the Calus's reign, a particular Scion scientist by the name of Atzat recreated the Oxa machine on a moon called Brand.
Holy shit.
Umanarath, who was the head of the Cabal military, as we talked about before, dispatched a Cabal armada to bomb Brand in order to destroy the device again, because it was deemed too powerful to be left in Scion hands. It could literally tell the future, or tell possibilities of the future.
Better than what the Vex can see, because again, we're still trying to figure out if this is like a chicken and the egg thing. Did the Vex get the idea of their prediction machines from this, or was this technology derived from the Vex? And it could literally be both ways.
Yeah. So Umanarath dispatched Cabal armada to just like glass it and not have to worry about it. But Emperor Calus told her to stand down. And instead of punishing Atzat, Calus parlayed with her and said, I'm going to reward you for your genius. And I want to integrate the Oxa machine into the Empire's use.
So this is kind of the first time of a Cabal seen as Scion as an equal.
And actually, Atzat earned the title of Freeborn and was known as Freeborn Atzat after that time.
Holy shit.
And Calus claims to have, quote-unquote, interpreted the mad prophecies of the Oxa machine, which apparently one of those visions detailed the rise of the Hive and Oryx the Taken King. So Calus was aware of the fact that, you know, the Hive were a thing. I don't know how much information he had on it, but he knew that like they were a force out there and a mighty powerful one at that.
Well, here's a kind of a stupid question. Pre-Keitel, did the Cabal ever actively engage and... Oh, yeah, in D1. Never mind. They drove a whole goddamn ship into it. Never mind.
Yeah, they sure did.
Never mind.
But that was at the direction not of Calus, but Gaul at that point.
Yeah. Not to confuse everyone who's listening right now and going, what the fuck are they talking about? So in D1, the Dreadnought, the Cabal literally slammed a ship into it to just be like, we're going to make a beachhead here, and this is how we're going to do it. And so they you know, win or die. Right. There is no going home. Like, yeah.
So some other interesting information about the Oxa machine is that the Vex have information on Oxa, which is accessible through the Insight Terminus on Nessus. It was accessed at an unknown time by both Atzat, who, again, don't know if Atzat's trying to maybe build another one and knows the Vex have info on it, or maybe that's where Atzat learned how to build the first one, or maybe the Vex...
Because in the Insight Terminus, there's a lot of Vex tech being used by Cabal. Like when they don't drop pod in that final arena, they're all being ported in through Vex gates.
Yeah. So like the Scions have enough, have enough understanding of how technology works that they can use Vex tech to some degree.
And that's the only reason why I almost feel like they learned. But if it's so much better at predicting than a Vex, man, that's gonna bug the crap out of me now. That chicken and the egg thing.
I know, and we won't know. But for anyone wondering about the Insight Terminus, so that's Atzat, but who's M-Sun 12? M-Sun 12 is a moniker for a one Maya Sundaresh, who is an Ishtar Collective scientist. But it's a little more complicated than that.
It's a lot more complicated than that.
But for the time being,
a lot more complicated than that.
For the time being, just know that an Ishtar Collective scientist from the Golden Age named Maya Sundaresh is what M-Sun 12 is referring to. And it's implied that Kargan, who is leading the offensive in the Insight Terminus strike, is likely there to try and get schematics to build another Oxa. It is also interesting, this is just some trivia, during Season of the Dawn, which is where we had the sundial that we were using with Osiris.
And the greatest sidearm known to man.
Rest in peace, Breachlight. Still in my vault.
I would have mentioned it if you hadn't said it, but then you said it, so that I was like, oh, well, I got to mention it now. So
yeah. So the sundial is referenced by Tazarak the Sun Eater, who is a scion that is part of that season's story, and suggests that the sundial is actually superior to Oxa in its ability to predict and foretell the future.
Well, and the sundial was that created by Osiris? That was built by Osiris, right?
I believe so, yeah.
With Cyrus's knowledge of the Infinite Forest.
Correct, yeah. It's Vex Tech,
which
but he built it, designed it,
tinkered it. Yeah.
So just some extra info there about Oxa, because I think it's interesting and it ties into the Scions quite heavily. So and Calus sees, essentially kind of like takes credit for the Oxa machine at this point. He's like, yeah, the Oxa machine was built during my reign and helped my empire, and so clearly it's because I was such a good emperor. Okay.
This guy's really full of himself.
And he talks about how in the second reading I did, he talks about how Cabal are natural leaders and we are driven to cultivate. We excel at war, but our debate chambers are just as glorified as our battlefields. Again, trying to speak to that, like, we had such a higher level of thinking and we're so much more open to discussion versus just, smashing our armies against each other. Really painting a very different type of different life for Cabal than what had been known up till that point and what we know now. So despite this paradise and this great, cultural enlightenment, martial prowess and proving your strength is still very important for the Cabal culture. And so to give them a place to do this, Calus hosted coliseums where combatants could come and prove themselves. And this is where Calus first met Gaul. Gaul was a participant in the Colosseum. And Calus writes about his first impressions of Gaul in the lore card of the Ghost Primus weapon, which was the auto rifle from the Leviathan raid. And it says, Gaul was an unexpected gift to my Colosseum, a disfigured albino from the outer wastes who defeated opponents 3 times his weight. How could I resist such a unique creature? He fought with terrible discipline and patience. Most gladiators wanted to stand in the center of the arena and trade blows until the weaker one died. Not Gaul. He never attacked from the front, never stood in one place. Frustrated and exhausted, his opponent would make a mistake. I used to play a game with those puffed-up aristocrats that would gamble at my arena. I bet on Gaul, and anyone who had displeased me had to bet against him. It was fun for a time, but his talent was too valuable to risk in the Colosseum. So I appointed him Primus of the Red Legion and instead set him loose upon my enemies.
I mean, that's there's so many Roman parallels here. Like, I mean, this is
yeah, and Colosseums, all that. But yeah, so here comes Gaul into this Colosseum of people proving themselves, proving their strength against each other, and he's unbeatable. To the point where Calus is his way of punishing people that he doesn't like is, bet against him. is pretty reliable. But he recognizes, he recognizes that in a Colosseum eventually something might happen, and this is he doesn't want to risk Gaul's life because he sees him as too important at that point. And so he pulls him from the Colosseum and says, I am going to make you Primus of the Red Legion. So essentially the commander of the Red Legion, that would report directly to the Umanarath, who is kind of the leader of all of the legions, which is a pretty significant place of power in the Cabal hierarchy.
Yeah.
However, the Cabal Empire was not all rainbows and sunshine, because a plot was hatched to usurp the empire and to usurp Calus by Keitel, the consul, Gaul, and some other close servants to Emperor Calus. And we're going to talk about all of that in part 2.
Next time on okay. Well, damn. We covered that first part a lot faster than I expected.
Yeah, me too, actually. But this is good. I think we're definitely going to be able to condense this into 3 parts, maybe 2.5. We'll see. We'll see how things go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Damn. I don't know what to do now.
what
Confusion strikes. What because you don't like Big Red. Fuck you. No. Okay. Well. Wow. We really did cover a lot. Holy cow.
Yeah,
okay. So how, as far as a timeline, then this had to have been several centuries. At least, I'd say at least. Could we say 100 centuries? Could we say this was over 1,000 years?
I don't know that we have anything definitive to say that, but given the time span that it seems Cabal live, I think it's totally possible.
I mean, if we were to take, a century for a Cabal, if we were to think of that in terms of human lifespan, and we were to say, well, if a century to a Cabal is a year to a human lives to 80, a Cabal would live to 800 years old.
Yeah, sure.
That seems plausible. But we also had a lot of time from Acrius, which, for those of you that don't know what he was talking about, Acrius is not just some thing you buy from a stupid kiosk in the middle of the tower. Legend of Acrius was an awesome quest chain that led through the original Leviathan raid, and it was a shotgun, and it was crap. Nobody ever used it ever.
Well, people used it when it first came out because shotguns were heavy weapons at the time.
That's right.
It was the strongest one.
It was the strongest heavy weapon shotgun. Yeah.
In vanilla.
There's a lot of stuff from Vanilla Destiny or Vanilla D2 that I feel like we take for granted now. Like, times have changed. Okay. Well, if that's all we got tonight, then I guess I'll do my thank yous.
Yeah. No, that's all we've got for this particular portion. Say it's just a good stopping point, and we're pretty much at time anyway. So
yeah, cool. Well, then my thank you tonight goes to Calus for having the balls to deball a Cabal.
God damn it.
That was so perfect. I was so proud of myself for that one. I've been thinking about that one for like 10 minutes. Like, how do I work this in here? So yeah, that's it. Suck it, Trebek.
So that's it? That's all you got?
That's it. That's it. Myth, you got anything?
All right. Well, I am then...
Top that, sucker.
Oh, there's no topping. There's no topping it.
You can't.
I am just then going to remind everybody that anyone and everyone that continues to listen to us, thank you. You are awesome. You are the reason we are still doing this and not just two crazy people talking to each other.
Absolutely.
We every time I look at that little chart of views go up more and more, it just, I cannot describe how awesome that feels.
Yay!
Anybody that wants to get in touch with us, just to say, hey, I like what you guys are doing, or I thought this idea about the lore, or this idea, or whatever it may be, totally down to discuss all of that. Feel free to hit us up. We have a Twitter page, which is at Myths and Stories, but with a Z, same way that the title is. So yeah, if you're so inclined, go ahead and send us a message there. Otherwise, that's it.
Okay. Well, then from all of us lore nerds to all of you guardians out there, we'll see you next week.